Hello. Am I live? I think I am live. Hello. Oh, good, it's working. Okay. So I am let me just share that I'm going live. I've never done this before. So how do I do it? God, I'm such a boomer. I don't even know what I'm doing. Let me see if I can shift this around a little bit. This doesn't need to be so big. Let's make this a little smaller, shall we? Let's put this over here, maybe a little bit. Put it over there. Okie dokie. Actually, that's not going to work, is it? Because then no one can see. No one can see anything. Okay, no, maybe you know what? Do you know what? I'm complicating things. You don't need to see me that big, do you? So maybe this is fine. Maybe this is all good. So yes, I'm going to keep an eye on. Not that many of you are going to be watching it. Let's be honest. Is anyone watching? I don't think so. I was thinking about whether I'd upload this to YouTube, but then I thought maybe it's easier just to kind of wing it and just, maybe let's just talk about it as I'm going through it. So let me see if I can share this. Can I share this? Can I cross post? How do I share it? Someone help. God, I really need to learn how to use this software, and I should have done that before I went live rather than just start randomly streaming. Okay, let me. I can share it if I go to my homepage. I go to my homepage, right? Copy link. Aha, here we go. I'm not such a boomer after all. Let's share that on my. Share that on my page. God, my laptop is really not liking me doing this. But it is what it is. Oh wow, we're slow today. This content isn't available right now. What? What's going on? Okay, how do I see the live details? Okay, so I don't know if any of you are watching this live, but we can pick it up if you are. Leave a comment, let me know if you have any questions. Does it also live post to Instagram? No, I don't think it does. Can you even live post on Instagram? I really should know these things, shouldn't I? But in any case, I thought, like I said, I was gonna film this and put it up on YouTube, but I thought maybe let's just jump on here and just be a bit more, open about, a bit more off the cuff about, the situation, what's going on, what we're going to do. I might even still, to be honest, record a quick video or cut this one down if I can save it, maybe, and do it that way. So basically, some of you might have seen over the last couple of weeks that everyone's favourite thing to talk about is EU legislation. So yeah, that is something that has come up over the last few weeks. I think for the most part, people didn't necessarily know that this was in the works. I don't even really remember hearing about it at all, to be honest. And I think the same can be said for a lot of small companies, not just pedal companies, but small companies in general. And this is basically a huge overhaul or addition or extension of some product safety regulation that has existed for a little while, but there have been some kind of big updates to it that I think, well, are going to have a massive impact on everyone, especially everyone. I say at least, in terms of small businesses, large businesses maybe not so much, but yeah, it's one of those things that's going to be a little bit of a mess. So I wanted to kind of speak through what's going on. You definitely, I won't be the only person that you hear about this from. I think the situation is going to affect basically every small pedal builder, and it's just something to worth keeping in mind. When you're a lot of people are going to be quite stressed out about this, I think. So, yeah. So basically, what is the new piece of legislation? So there's two things I want to talk about. One of which is this. So let's just kind of dive into this. So the General Product Safety Regulation, GPSR, is a new piece of legislation that is being enacted from the 13th of December, so 1 week from today. It is an extension of an existing piece of legislation that I believe has been around for quite a while. Legislation and product safety isn't something that's new. If you're a pedal builder, you'll be aware of, especially if you're in the in the UK or the EU, and you're selling products into the EU. Safety regulations like ROHS are things you've had to adhere to for quite a long time, and that is something I'm going to speak about the second half of this in regards to the Junipero and the Duplo and the Templo, because that is something that kind of affects those as well. So GPSR, this new piece of legislation, basically requires all products, with the exception of these ones that are listed here. Again, I don't know if you can see that. Maybe I need to zoom in a little bit. So basically, with the exception of medical products, some food and living plant materials, transport equipment, outside of these really specific things, every product that is going into the EU will have to adhere to these regulations. And the only reason that these are listed as exceptions is because these specific things already have their very strict regulations around them already. So it's not like they're exempt from regulations entirely. When it comes to this stuff, so basically for ROHS compliance, a lot of that is self-certified. So I can basically just say, yes, the hazardous substances that are banned through RHS, the pedals don't have any of that in. And if you want data sheets to prove that, then reach out to me and we can provide that information. So it was all kind of self-certified, and the onus was on me as the company, myself, to deal with that if anyone was to ask about the safety or the efficacy of these products. Under GPSR, what so that part of it, gathering information, gathering data sheets, all that kind of stuff, that's not really anything new. The issue is with GPSR, which is the thing that a lot of people are going to struggle with, and I don't really even see how it was ever thought that it would be practical for small businesses especially, is this here, the requirement to have a responsible economic operator in the UK. So, as it says here, for each product covered by the regulation, there has to be a responsible economic operator in the EU, an EU manufacturer, importer, authorised representative or fulfilment service provider, entrusted with tasks relating to safety of the product. So, and it says here, where are we? So it lists obligations for manufacturers, which I would be, importers, distributors, and then it kind of goes on. But basically, this here is the one that is most applicable here. Authorized representative or fulfillment service provider. So basically what this means is that the onus is going to be on small companies such as myself. When I say small, I mean micro businesses, it's just me, as are many pedal companies. Technically now what is needed as of the 13th of December is that every single company, no matter how big or small you are, whether you're, Amazon, or you are someone like me, or you are someone that's selling hand painted little carved wooden things on Etsy, all of these people now have to have an authorized representative in the EU, which means there has to be a physical person physically in the EU somewhere. That's where the registered address will be. They need to be the one point of contact for anyone in the EU, any regulatory body or customer who has a question regarding these products has to be able to reach out to them and ask them these questions, and they need to be able to reply to them. Instead of, the obvious thing just being, why can't they just reach out to the company directly? For that, I don't really know. I don't really understand why they have to be physically in the EU. It doesn't really make a lot of sense to me, and like I said, it doesn't really seem practical. I've spoken to a few people about this. My assumption with what this legislation is really intended for is for the EU to basically start a bit of a trade war with China. I think the intention is that they are trying to make it more difficult for companies like Shein and Temu to operate without any kind of checks and balances being done on the stuff that's being sold in to the EU market. And I understand that, because I know there have been, I don't know where it came from, I can't remember what company it was, but I know there have been issues around the safety of some products, like fake, like thermos, Stanley cups, those kind of things. Like kind of, they weren't sold as fakes, they weren't sold as Stanleys, but they were like knockoffs of that. And I know that some of those have been recalled because of like lead contamination. So I absolutely understand that on the surface of things, product safety is definitely something that's very important. And like it says here, what the aim of it is, providing a high level of consumer protection and a level playing field for businesses. That's something I really do take objection to, because it absolutely is not a level playing field for businesses when you're expecting someone like me to adhere to the same. There's no way that companies of small sizes can really afford to operate in this way. For big companies, for a lot of them, nothing is really going to change, because it really is just a case of if companies are big enough, they'll probably already have offices dotted around the EU. So it's just a case of assigning basically the same as what they would do in having an assigned fire marshal or something like that. They will basically just be, this person here works in the Madrid office, works in the Paris office, or whoever. They're now the point of contact for our company in the EU in everything regarding to GPSR. So for them, nothing's going to change. But for me and many other small businesses and micro businesses, it's not really something that's massively viable, at least as it stands and how I, see it at the moment. Already, there's been a huge influx of companies. Even if you just Google GPSR, a huge number of companies that are, bidding on, on that keyword for an ad, and popping up and being like, yeah, no, we'll cover you. We'll be your, your representative, which is obviously all a bit dodgy, really. You never really know whether these people are well-intentioned. I get the feeling they're not. I have a feeling it's an opportunity to do a bit of a cash grab. So, yeah, there's going to be a lot of that going around. There's going to be a lot of people getting ripped off. The prices they advertise at for being this operator, range from like 300 to 5,000 euros a year. I think ultimately what I hope is going to be, because there's somewhere mentioned in this, it's a very long piece of legislation. I think what's going to be mentioned in here somewhere, or what is mentioned in here somewhere, is something along the lines of, for small businesses or for SMEs, the need for a kind of hub or a place where people can go to ask questions, and the need for things to be cheap and as little red tape as possible is understood. So there's something along the lines in there. So they have considered the impact this will have on small businesses. I don't think they have really and truly fully considered it. What I think is probably going to happen, as sometimes usually happens with a lot of these big legislations, is they get put live, they realise there is a need for some loopholes or exclusions, and I hope what they're going to do is walk some of this back and make some exclusions for small and micro businesses, because it just doesn't make sense that, like I said, somewhere, even if I'm not talking about myself, because I understand, electronics to a certain extent need to have a bit more scrutiny against them. So even if I'm not talking about myself, it doesn't make sense that, like I said, someone on Etsy selling little wooden trinkets needs to have a physical person in the EU, and they've had to do risk assessments and fill out all this kind of stuff and prove that, where the wood has been manufactured and where the paint they've used has come from and all that kind of stuff. That just seems absolutely completely just not viable in terms of paperwork and legwork. I don't blame any small companies for just saying, do you know what, it's actually not even worth the aggravation. It's not worth the maximum fine, which I think is 10 million euros or something, for being in breach of compliance. So I absolutely do not blame businesses for wanting to pull out of the EU market. So if you go on Instagram and you just type in GPSR into the search bar, you'll see a million posts from different small companies saying the same thing, that saying, sorry, we can't sell to the EU anymore. And the real kick in the teeth on top of that is that this also excludes parts of the UK, because Northern Ireland, as a lot of you will be aware, is still in the UK, but unfortunately, because of the weird Brexit negotiations that happened, in terms of trade, Northern Ireland are, for all intents and purposes, still in the EU, which means that I can no longer sell to Northern Ireland either under this. The same regulation applies just to sell into Northern Ireland. I don't have to have a separate representative in Northern Ireland. It just has to be within the EU still, but it means that I now cannot sell to even parts of the UK because of this. That's kind of how messy it is. So yeah, really not practical. I think what I'm going to do is, having spoken to a few people and had some advice from a couple of people, I think what I'm going to try and do is try and kind of group together a bunch of companies that are a similar size to myself, like other pedal companies that I know, because obviously I know quite a few of them, and see if we can kind of group together as a cooperative and see if we can find someone that is willing to represent everyone in one go, and hopefully we can split some of the cost and share some of the burden so we can start selling to the EU again. As of right now, I have removed the ability for customers to order to EU countries, so apologies if you've been on the site and you've tried to order anything. I have put a warning banner up there at the moment that just says we've paused all orders to the EU and Northern Ireland. It's a really a well-intentioned piece of legislation that I think has been implemented really, really poorly. And I don't think there's really been any consideration for the amount of impact and cost it will have on businesses that just simply can't afford it. And not only that, this is the thing, I'm assuming, again, like I said, the reason I think they're doing this is to, like I say, kind of start a bit of a trade war with China. And I guess in an attempt to boost their own internal economies. But I think what they've actually done unintentionally is caught all of these small companies in the crossfire. Not only companies like myself that are selling into the EU, but if you are a pedal company, let's say you own a pedal company and you're based in France or Spain, inevitably the parts you're buying in, the components you're buying in, inevitably are from outside the EU, because you're going to be really hard pressed to buy all of your resistors and capacitors and transistors and switches and jacks and all that kind of stuff. One of those products will be coming from China. There just really isn't any other way around it. To buy all of that stuff being made within the EU, to be honest, I think it's impossible. And even if you could do it, it would be prohibitively expensive, to the point where a fuzz pedal would probably be like £500 or £600. It's just not really a viable option. So I think what they've accidentally done is also hamstrung all of the small businesses within the EU as well, because presumably anywhere that they're now trying to buy from, somewhere in China or whoever selling capacitors, presumably that company in China now has to have a representative in the EU. So the whole thing is super messy, and how they thought this would be able to be rolled out without a ridiculous headache for everyone involved, I don't know. So that's where we are. It's a real kick in the teeth, but I will keep everyone updated on how it goes. I'll try and do as best I can to move this along quickly and find a solution where I'm able to sell to the EU again. But we'll see. Hopefully it won't be too long. The second part, which is something that I could kind of see happening, and then over the last month or so, it's been obvious that that's the kind of call we need to make now, is the Junipero and the Duplo and the Templo. Let's have a look, shall we? Let's bring this up. So, you can see here, orders to the EU and Northern Ireland, currently paused to GSPR. So, let's have a look. The big box pedals, the Duplo, Junipero and Templo. So, these are pedals that have been out for a few years now. They're obviously, as you all know, big digital pedals. They all run off of the same kind of brain. So, internally they are effectively the same pedal in terms of hardware. It's just kind of software and code that makes them different. We are unfortunately having to discontinue these with immediate effect. They will no longer be for sale in the UK or the EU. Obviously, the EU, due to partly due to GSPR, but also because linking back to what I said before, ROHS. So ROHS is again another kind of product safety initiative to avoid having hazardous substances in products. There's a handful of different substances. One of which is lead, so people have known about that for a long time. So especially in the pedal world, an easy way to avoid using lead in your products, because most components for the most part don't really have lead in unless you're buying some kind of like old old like NOS parts. New stuff that's manufactured for the most part doesn't really contain lead. Circuit boards, again, they're relatively easy. If you're buying circuit boards in from China, there is still the option to buy them with lead in, but it's easy enough to just select the option that says no, make them this way, that doesn't have lead in. So again, it's super easy for the most part to avoid, and fuzz pedals and stuff, dead easy. When it comes to digital pedals and certain other circuits, so things like optical compressors, univibe circuits, and then also digital pedals that require a kind of external control for things like MIDI, or analog pedals that need digital control. So think a lot of things like a lot of Chase Bliss stuff was like this. They require the use of an optocoupler or a photoresistor. So that's what this is. That's what this little box looks like with the four legs. So basically, what an optocoupler is an LED. You've all seen those, and something called a light-dependent resistor, or an LDR. Basically, you have these two things here, as you can see in this thing. They're basically facing each other. So the photoresistor is here, and the LED is just shining directly at it. That is then locked in an epoxy case or a plastic case that's completely airtight and sealed, and then you can use those in the circuit to control different parameters. It's been a super common way of doing, like I said, optical compressors and univibe circuits for a long time, and then more recently with companies like Chase Bliss, and I think Stone Deaf maybe, and us, as well as many other companies. A common thing to do to offer digital control over analog parameters is to use these. And they have basically the issue with not optocouplers themselves, but light-dependent resistors. So the one of the components within this is that the active component is a component called cadmium sulfide. So cadmium itself, not cadmium sulfide, is a one of the substances that's banned. So components and products can't have over X amount per percentage of the component can't be this compound. So that has been something that has been even when we I knew that there had been so I think ROHS came in I think like 2008 or 2007 or something like that, quite a while ago. And for a very long time, there was an exemption specifically for optocouplers within audio circuits. So amplifiers, effects pedals were largely exempt from this ban. That exemption has now expired, which is a shame because the risk, even though it's cadmium sulfide, not cadmium. Even if it was cadmium, let's just say it's just regular old cadmium, the good old stuff. The risk posed by these is beyond low to the point of it being so ridiculous that they are banned. The only way that you would even, and this is a big if, the only way that you could maybe cause yourself some kind of damage really would be if you smashed this airtight epoxy case apart, you scraped the clear plastic off of the LDR that seals it completely. So it's a sealed component within a sealed component. So if you smashed apart the black box, you scraped all the clear plastic off the resistor, you ground up the component and then snorted it like cocaine, is the only way that you would ingest cadmium from this product. And even then, to do it once would still be a negligible amount. The idea that it's not asbestos, let's put it that way. It's not anything like that. So the ban on it has always been a bit silly, and the fact that the exemption is now over is a real shame. So that's why you would have seen a few months ago, I think Chase Bliss discontinued 5 or 6 pedals that use this technology because they are still selling into the EU market, which again is a shame because they've had to do that. And I guess for them, it makes sense. Even though you can still sell this, ROHS, I should say, ROHS only applies to the EU and the UK. So the UK were on the EU law. And then since, obviously, because of Brexit, we effectively now have exactly the same thing, but it's called like British ROHS or something instead of EU ROHS. So it's all very complicated and completely unnecessary that we now effectively have 2 separate laws that are the same thing that we all have to adhere to, but they're now classed under 2 different pieces of legislation. This is another complication of Brexit. So, yeah. You'll also notice here, because I did buy my Optos from this company, X5, and you'll notice here that this bit of text here says RHS compliant, which again I have the documentation from X5. I have the data sheet. I have a certificate of testing that says it's RHS compliant. But from my understanding and the people I've spoken to, even being able to present that test certificate doesn't necessarily mean they'll accept it. So, to be honest, largely it's basically just not worth the risk of selling into the UK market anymore. So that is why, effective immediately, I'm pulling them from the market in the UK and then obviously in the EU as well. Which is unfortunate. These were kind of a big breakthrough for us in terms of design, and doing something that I don't think another small British pedal company had done. And it's a real shame that we're having to discontinue these. So yeah, it's a real pain. And it also means that unfortunately the other kind of versions that we'd worked on and thought about, which was like a mini version of it that was a similar size to the fuzz pedals that we make, that would effectively the same circuit as these three that you see on the screen at the moment, but without kind of MIDI and stereo and all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of like a stripped back version. We'd spent several £1,000s working on the development of that, and unfortunately it looks like it's never really going to see the light of day, which is again a real shame, because it's now knowing that we now can't sell it either in the UK or US. It is kind of a shame knowing that we can't really bring it to market, because the amount of money that would need to go into producing a huge batch of we've got a test unit, but the amount of money that would go into producing a huge batch of boards and getting them all printed and putting parts on them, and getting enclosures made and all that kind of stuff, the amount of additional cost for now effectively the ability to only sell it to, I say, a small area. I know it's the States and it's Australia and Canada, but by not being able to sell that to a huge market, which is the UK and the EU, it's just not really worth doing. So yeah, it's really unfortunate. So I think what we're going to do is basically I'll probably just extend this sale probably indefinitely, because like I said, I can still sell these units to the US. So the US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, places like that where this ban for the optocouplers doesn't exist, I can still sell to these countries. So, and I should say, just to put anyone's mind at ease, there is no concern. Like, don't be, if you have one of these units, they are fine. They are safe to use. Continue using as you would use them normally. There's obviously nothing to worry about. Just don't go smashing the parts up and snorting the dust. I don't, like you need to be told that anyway, but that's what it is. So yeah, that's the update. It's a real shame. If anything, there's maybe a silver lining in the sense that I've been wanting to work on some new stuff, and I think maybe this is kind of given me the kick that I needed to think about what I want to do with the next kind of iteration of modulation and reverb and delay pedals that I wanted to work on. Like I said, it's a real shame that some of this stuff is never going to see the light of day, and the other ideas that I had with this specific circuit are never really going to come out. But it does offer a new kind of opportunity to start looking at things a little bit differently and do something else with a different infrastructure around it. So yeah, I'm sorry it's not exactly the best update. Like I said, I'm probably going to strip maybe a condensed version of this down, because I've been speaking a lot and maybe not the most coherently, because I'm just this is just flow of consciousness as I'm kind of talking. So yeah, if anyone has any questions about any of this stuff, I'm more than happy to answer it. If you have concerns about and you want to buy anything, or you're worried about how something can get to you, or you want to talk more broadly, or you think anyone that could help in regards to the authorized representative, if you're friends with any other distributors or manufacturers or pedal companies, let me know. I'm more than happy to have those conversations with anyone. So yeah, I think that's it. If you're in the States, keep an eye out. If you're in the States, you're in Canada, Mexico, Australia, New Zealand, anywhere outside of the EU or the UK, keep an eye out for some discounts on these. I mean, they're already discounted. Who knows? We might even drop them a bit further just to get them out. If you have one, they can still be repaired. I believe repairs are exempt. Well, that says repaired or reconditioned problem. But anyway, I believe that things that need to be repaired. So if you have like a Junipero or a Duplo and something needs to be repaired, and you're in Spain or wherever, I believe I am still able to keep up the repairs of them. So if anything happens, a foot switch breaks or whatever, that that can still be fixed for you. So yeah, a bit of a rubbish one on a Friday, but it is what it is. Yeah, if you need anything or want to talk to me about anything, just let me know. All right. Speak to you later. Love you. Bye.